And we will be welcoming you in periodically as more and more people join and witness as the people charge Western imperialism and Israel with the charge of war crimes, genocide, and crimes against humanity.
The first charge under genocide is killing members of the group. This requires that the perpetrator killed one or more persons. Such persons belong to a particular national, ethnical, racial, or religious group. The perpetrator intended to destroy in whole or in part that national, ethnical, racial, or religious group as such.
This is a testimony from Halal Adel Al-Najmi. On Monday, December 11th, 2023, I was asleep in our crowded house in Al-Maghazi refugee camp in the middle of the Gaza Strip. We woke up for Fajr prayer, and suddenly our house was subjected to intense shelling. I lost consciousness, and hours later, I woke up to find myself in the hospital with serious injuries all over my body. My name is Halal Adel Al-Najmi. I am 13 years old. I am from Al-Maghazi refugee camp in the middle of the Gaza Strip. I lived a beautiful life before the start of the war. Since the first day of the war, our house has turned into a refuge for many displaced people who fled from the Israeli shelling that targeted all areas of the Gaza Strip. We lived together with the displaced people as one family, sharing with them everything we had. I hoped that the war would end without us being harmed, but the war has been ongoing for several months, and I cannot describe the pain caused to me by the Israeli occupation, which will haunt me for the rest of my life. While my family was praying, the occupation forces bombed our house. The force of the explosion threw me and my brother Karim, 20 years old, into the street behind our house. My brother Karim and I were the only ones to survive the bombing, and everyone else was martyred.
As of June 7th of 2024, the Committee to Protect Journalists preliminary investigations showed that at least 108 Palestinian journalists and media workers have been killed, making it the deadliest period for journalists since CPJ began gathering data in 1992. Israel's brutal assault has rendered bodies unrecognizable or buried them under the rubble of the homes and institutions in which they've destroyed. While they claim to be precise in their attacks, the methods and weapons with which they carry out their genocide show a complete disregard for Palestinian life. Our second charge, causing serious bodily or mentally harm to members of the group, almost goes without explaining, as we see the devastation unleashed by Israel on Gaza every day.
On November 18, 2023, a Doctors Without Borders, Médecins Sans Frontières, MSF evacuation convoy came under fire in Gaza City in what immediately appears to be a deliberate attack against clearly identified MSF vehicles. 2 people were killed, both family members of MSF staff, including one who was a volunteer supporting MSF medical team at a Shifa hospital. This excerpt was taken from a Human Rights Watch article, testimony from a Doctors Without Borders staff member. When we arrived at Al-Waqida Street, I saw tanks and snipers at the top of buildings. I was terrified when I saw that the snipers and the tanks were pointing their weapons at us, especially at the 4th and the 5th van in the convoy. They started opening fire at us, and when a bullet grazed my forehead, I got a superficial injury. The bullet hit my colleague, Ala, in the head. He sat next to me. He had a pencil head injury and started bleeding massively. His head fell on the steering wheel, and I immediately retook control of the vehicle to move to the right of the street. This testimony is from Pascal, an emergency coordinator for MSF who has been in Gaza since December 10, 2023.
But while Israel seeks to maim and kill Palestinian lives, they take their goals even further. Another offense under the Genocide Convention, deliberately inflicting on the brute conditions of life calculated to bring about its physical destruction in whole or in part. The Zionist project seeks not only to devastate Palestinian lives, but also targets
the infrastructure and systems essential to sustaining the possibility of life. That is why one of our demands has always been to lift the siege on Gaza, which has been under a blockade for 16 years, long before October 7th. The widespread destruction of Gaza over the past 8 months serves as evidence of their aim to destroy conditions of life, as well as stifle hopes of rebuilding. HK is a Palestinian from Gaza based in Chicago. My mother, Faria Ezzeddin Abdijani Hayal, was born in 1939 on November 10, 2023. She was killed by Israeli shelling in Gaza. She was with her daughter, her sister, Soha and Harrisburg and Grace Barnsburg, sheltering in a family house. The house was bombed at night and became uninhabitable. They waited for the morning to move to another house, but an Israeli plane shelled them while walking and killed my 84-year-old mother, my 31-year-old niece, and my sister and daughters-in-law, who was 28 years old, mother of 2 babies. My mother was very loving, compassionate, endearing, kind, and protective. She was strong, extraordinary, supportive, intuitive, firm, and mindset. I have received a lot of words of support, sympathy, and condolences from many family members, friends, neighbors, and people who worked with her in the past. They shared memories of her. Yamya, Fariad's sister, passed away in March 2023. My sister, Soha, tried to save my mother by an Israeli sniper targeted her and shot her 3 times in the leg. Soha's daughter and my niece had disability. She was also targeted by the sniper. She was shot and bled to death for 7 hours. My injured sister and her family have been seeking shelter in the building and have been unable to go to the hospital since November 10, 2023.
Over 1 million are displaced and without homes. There's no electricity in Gaza. The 3 major desalination plants were destroyed or left without fuel, severely limiting access to drinking water. Recent reports of Israeli plans to flood tunnels in Gaza with seawater is a major concern, given the risks it would pose of further degradation and collapse of Gaza's water and sewage infrastructure, and of long-lasting contamination of Gaza's aquifer soil. Environmental experts have warned that the strategy risks causing an ecological catastrophe, leaving Gaza with no drinkable water, devastating what little agriculture is possible, and ruin the conditions of life of everyone in Gaza.
After Israel proved its ability and willingness to operate as a proxy of Western interests in the region, the United States invested in its development in order to advance its own dominance in the region, ultimately becoming the primary military and financial sponsor of Israel. As we all know, the United States provides billions of dollars in military aid to Israel every year. It encourages and facilitates a number of private business and cultural exchanges between the United States citizens and Israel, including the police. U.S. bombs are dropped on Palestinian schools. Without just historical context, we've got a clear understanding of the material reality of the Zionist occupation and the Palestinian resistance. Any legal framework that considers the 2 sides as equal is wholly inadequate to achieving a people's justice.
We treated a 6-year-old female child. She was badly injured with an external fixator, a tool to hold broken bones in place, and there is a big raw area in her flesh. She was crying, shouting. She was begging for painkillers, for sedation, because she's tired from the pain, and she's tired from the inability to move her arm. In most shelters, you will find fleas. You will find all kinds of skin diseases, all kinds of gastrointestinal symptoms. And in one shelter near where I'm located, there is hepatitis A spread between people. It's really hard to treat them because we don't have access to the needed drugs. We don't have access to anything at all. Water and food are not clean, and people are now eating anything they can find because it's really starvation here. I don't believe that anything I say will change the picture. My only message is that Palestinians have the right to be treated as human beings. have the right to live every day, every night. I fear for my kid's life, for my life. And I'm sorry to say that, but after 60 days of war, I'm losing hope. And I am saying that the ones who passed away in the first few days were very lucky. Every day the same, and anyone who can escape believes he is a survivor. Sadly, no one is a survivor. Every home has grief. Every memory once existed has been erased. I don't know what this is for, and where is this world from us? Are our lives that cheap, sir? Consider us, as you said, animals? Where are the animals' rights from what is happening to us? I don't know what tomorrow is hiding, but what I'm sure of is that we are dying, but each one is waiting for their turn. Until our turn comes, we must suffer and die 1,000,000 times. If this is the end of the story, then kill us all. We are basically dead. We have neither lived the past, nor the present, or the future. We have not tasted anything in life. It was all black, and its darkness no taste for color.
I feared for my children from the intense bombardment. The occupation forces bombed several houses adjacent to us, and dozens of our friends, neighbors, and loved ones were martyred. I was very afraid for my children, and we all began to sleep in one room. I used to tell them that if the house was bombed, we would die together, and if we survived, we would survive together. Our financial situation deteriorated greatly during the war. The war caused the closure of all restaurants, and all residents of the Gaza Strip lost their jobs due to the closure of crossings and the depletion of all food supplies from the markets.
The shared element of a crime against humanity is that perpetrators target civilian populations in widespread or systematic ways, subjecting civilians to the most egregious cruelty human beings can impose on one another. These crimes offend the core of our shared humanity, are not limited by borders, and are the responsibility of the entire international community to enforce. Though it is not required for the perpetrator to have knowledge of all characteristics of an attack or the precise detail, the indicted individuals being tried here have demonstrated essential contributions, intentional direction, and cognizable control over the most despicable and horrifying atrocities humanity is capable of inflicting on itself.
This court, having heard the people's evidence, will now consider the charges brought against the states of Israel and the United States, along with the individual defendants, Benjamin Netanyahu, Yoav Gallant, Joseph Biden, Lloyd Austin, and Anthony Blinken, who stand accused of committing the most grave crimes of genocide, war crimes, and crimes against humanity. These heinous acts demand accountability and justice. The people move to determine the appropriate sentence for each defendant, considering the gravity of the crimes committed and the need for accountability and justice for all people of Palestine and for the conscience of the humanity of all people of the world. We will now pass these proceedings on to our honorable judging panel to share the deliberation process with us here. We will hear brief remarks from each member of our judging panel, and then we will move to a judge who will deliver the verdict.
After reviewing all the evidence provided, we, the judges, find the accused guilty of all charges.
I charge the U.S. government and President Genocide Joseph Biden with crimes against humanity and to be guilty on all charges.
We charge the Israeli state and the criminal living in the house behind us with genocide.
But now we are here to judge them. We are here, all of us, to judge them on what they did for the genocide that they are committing to our people. And we hold them accountable to everything that they're doing.
There is no justification for this genocide, and justice has to prevail. We find the United States and Israel guilty on all charges.
And I'm here to charge Israel and the U.S.
with war crimes and genocide, and to let them know they will not win. Free Palestine!
We charge the Zionist entity and the U.S. government guilty of all war crimes committed since 1948 and from October 7th to 2023 and on.
With this verdict, we honor all the Palestinian lives lost in pursuit of settler colonialism. We remember their lives, but we also take their metrodome as a charge to us to continue building our movement. To us, the preservation of a true democracy is not upheld only through the herd. To learn and see for themselves what the reality of their oppression is, and to insist upon change. In order to honor our martyrs, we must hold our red line, demanding our governments take responsibility for their complicity and crying out for a free Palestine. And we will not rest until Palestine is free. As the late Honduran martyr Berta Cáceres said in 2016, impunity is not eternal. The people know how to get justice. That is exactly what we have done here today. Every time we document, indict, and convict these people for what they are, war criminals, we build our confidence in the just cause of our fight.